If you were born between 1976 and 1985, you are living inside a psychological paradox that almost no one truly understands. You are the only group of human beings alive right now who vividly remember the physical weight of a rotary phone, the absolute dread of missing your favorite TV show, and the heavy boredom of a Sunday afternoon with nothing to do but sit with your own thoughts. You remember when making plans meant calling a landline, hoping your friend was home, and trusting they would actually show up, because there was no way to text them if they were running late. That required a level of psychological commitment that simply does not exist anymore. Yet today, you navigate digital platforms effortlessly and use smartphones as if you were born holding one. This leaves you floating in a bizarre generational limbo. Generation X thinks you are too soft, too wired into the digital machine. Millennials see you as fundamentally analog, a little too old to be a true digital native. No matter what room you walk into, you feel like an imposter, a ghost of the analog era haunting a digital world. Here is the thing, that feeling is not in your head. It is not a personality flaw or a sign of weakness. It is a highly specific psychological condition born from a violent collision of massive historical shifts and your exact stage of neurological development. And once you understand what actually happened to your brain during those years, everything, your contradictions, your exhaustion, your craving for silence, begins to make sense. Think about your childhood for a moment. Every single day, you woke up in a world that was fundamentally quiet. Boredom was not a glitch to be immediately corrected. It was a heavy physical presence in your living room that you had to sit with. There was no infinite scroll waiting in your pocket to rescue you from your own thoughts. You had to memorize dozens of phone numbers. You had to check the newspaper to find out what was playing at the cinema. If you missed a television episode, it was gone forever, leaving behind a strange, lingering sense of loss that younger generations will simply never understand. This forced you to build something rare, a tolerance for waiting, and a baseline neurochemical state that was not constantly spiked by artificial stimuli. But the most crucial psychological gift of your analog youth was something called autobiographical memory fluidity. Your mistakes, your bad haircuts, your epic failures, none of them were permanently recorded. They existed only in physical photographs tucked into shoeboxes and in the memories of people who were actually there. Neuroscience tells us that human memory is naturally designed to be fluid. Your brain is a supreme editor. It softens the edges of trauma, rewrites the details of a painful breakup, and transforms your most embarrassing teenage moments into funny stories you tell at dinner parties. That natural editing process is how a healthy adult identity is built. Because you grew up analog, your prefrontal cortex was allowed to perform this editing without the interference of a permanent digital footprint. You were allowed to reinvent yourself every single year. That is a psychological luxury that no generation after yours will ever experience again. Then everything changed, and it did not happen slowly. Right as you were stepping into the most critical phase of your neurological development, the entire paradigm of human communication flipped upside down. You went from passing handwritten notes in the back of a classroom directly into the age of instant messaging, chat rooms, and the chaotic birth of social media. You were there when MySpace launched. You had to navigate the psychological minefield of the top 8 friends list. You transitioned from having 3 ways to reach a person to having 17. And here is the fascinating reason why you adapted better than your parents, but differently from your younger siblings. It comes down to the plasticity of your prefrontal cortex, the region of your brain responsible for complex planning, decision-making, and adapting to entirely new rules. For a long time, scientists believed the brain stopped developing in childhood. Modern neuroimaging has since proven that the prefrontal cortex remains highly malleable until around age 25. Now consider exactly when the internet and cell phones took over the world. You were sitting right in the middle of that high-plasticity window. Your brain was mature enough to retain the deep analog roots of your childhood, yet still soft and flexible enough to absorb the new digital reality like a sponge. You essentially developed a bilingual brain. Just as someone who learns a second language young enough can speak it without an accent, you learned the digital world natively, but your mother tongue was still analog. This is why you can sit in a room and have a deep, uninterrupted face-to-face conversation without reaching for your phone every 30 seconds. Your baseline architecture was built before that reflex existed. And yet you never feel the creeping technological terror that paralyses older generations when a new software update drops. You speak both languages fluently, and you always have. This dual wiring is also the source of your most persistent exhaustion. You look at younger generations, the true digital natives, and you see their reliance on external validation through algorithms. You see how they cannot tolerate a single moment of silence without filling it with a podcast or a short-form video. You understand the technology perfectly well. In fact, you probably helped build the infrastructure for it. But you do not share their emotional attachment to it, and you feel a genuine grief for things they will never know. The deep peace of being completely unreachable for a weekend, the thrill of finding a hidden track on a physical CD. Then you look at the older generations and feel equally alienated by their stubborn refusal to adapt, their confusion over basic digital etiquette, their romanticization of a past that was heavily flawed. You cannot relate to that rigidity either. You are caught in the middle, permanently. Think of your brain as a bridge. You are standing at the center of the most significant evolutionary leap in human communication. On one side, 10,000 years of physical analog human history. On the other, an infinite, expanding digital future. You are the only ones holding the hands of both eras simultaneously. You can explain a physical encyclopedia to a teenager and a cloud server to an 80-year-old, often in the same afternoon. But standing on a bridge is an incredibly lonely place to live. You never get to rest fully on either side. Your exhaustion is not burnout from work. It is the neurological fatigue of constantly translating the world between two entirely different dimensions of reality every single day. Here is where everything you thought was a weakness becomes your ultimate advantage. We are now entering an era of artificial intelligence, deepfakes, and algorithmically generated relationships. Younger generations are walking into this new reality without any baseline defense mechanism, because they have never known a world that was not mediated by glowing screens. They have no internal anchor for when the digital world becomes indistinguishable from reality. But you do. Your analog childhood gave you a permanent internal compass for what is real and what is manufactured. You possess an organic lie detector built from scraped knees, physical maps, and the absolute necessity of showing up in person. You have the neurological antibodies required to survive the next massive wave of technological disruption, because you already survived the first one, without a manual. And that is not all. Many of you came of age professionally just in time to be gutted by the 2008 financial collapse. That combination of severe economic trauma and violent technological whiplash did not break you. It forged a brain that is practically immune to future shock. You know exactly how to look at a collapsing system, adapt to the new rules, and build an entirely different life on the rubble. You have done it before, you will do it again. So I want you to ask yourself something seriously. Have you been apologizing for your contradictions instead of using them? Have you felt guilty for desperately wanting to throw your phone into the ocean and disappear into the woods for a week, even though that same phone runs your business and your social life? Have you been treating your generational homelessness as a personal failure? What if it is actually your greatest freedom? You are not bound by the rigid analog loyalty of the past, and you are not enslaved by the digital addiction of the future. You exist in the middle ground, and you are the only ones who built it. Your craving for real disconnection is not burnout. It is your prefrontal cortex actively protecting its most valuable asset, your human attention and your capacity for deep, uninterrupted thought. In a world that is aggressively trying to monetize every second of that attention, protecting it is a radical act. The next time you feel out of place, surrounded by people chasing the next digital trend, or frustrated by those who refuse to evolve even slightly, remember what you actually are. You are the bridge, and bridges are not built to live on. They are built to hold immense pressure, to connect landscapes that would otherwise remain permanently isolated, and to last long after the people who built them are gone. That is not a burden, that is a purpose.